Welcome to Happily Ever After, the podcast where we talk about life's big stories. From great sex to sexual trauma, breakups and breakdowns, icky secrets and happy endings. It's the stuff that makes us human, and boy do we cover it all. I'm your host, Hannah Harvey. I'm a writer and a parenting blogger at mumsdays.com. That's mumsdays.com. I would be very grateful if you could subscribe and leave a review, because it means more people can find the podcast. And I also really love hearing from you, so please contact me through Instagram at mumsdays with all your stories of life and any thoughts you might have on the episode or even questions you want answering. You can find all the details from this episode in the show notes. Hello and welcome to Happily Ever After. It's me, Hannah, and today I'm joined by Becci, who is Wild Luna Yoga on Instagram, and she's a Yoni Alchemist. Are you? Are you, Becci?
One tries.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
You're so welcome, my sweet.
Really appreciate it. So, what do you do, Bab?
I love how you've opened with Yoni Alchemist. So just to describe it a little bit for people who are like, what the actual is a Yoni Alchemist? So this is definitely a term that I have coined.
Okay.
So when we refer to the Yoni, this is actually a Sanskrit term for the entire womb space, internal, external. We've got everything up in there: ovaries, uterus, vaginal walls, vulva, all of it. But unfortunately, in our language, we don't have a word that encapsulates the whole thing. So Yoni, obviously, for me, feels very familiar to discuss. But for someone being like, Yoni, like, who's my friend? So we'll often refer to that as womb space. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to have a womb at all, like if you've had a hysterectomy, if you've had certain parts moved, but womb space encapsulates a lot of what we're talking about. So it's the same, right, as the external part is called a vulva. The internal part of the lower bit is the vagina. So when we're talking about vaginas, actually, that's kind of what people refer to as a yoni, but obviously that's not anatomically correct. And not that I want to be like the PC police on that at all, but it really is the same as calling a penis testicles or vice versa. Like, the more educated we are about that, and instead of referring to what we see as the outer part as a vagina, where it's a vulva, then the more like, I've just been educated in that. So hence Yoni, because that would take up a lot of space on my Instagram bio. So Yoni works perfectly. A lot of the work I do is alchemy. So it is magic for a woman. And then a lot of the work also then involves mysticism. So I was like, I'm going to bang these two words together, absolutely pun intended. And yeah, exactly right. Like, and it really means like being able to help a woman feel transformed within herself, within her womb space, within Yoni, because often, right, especially women that have had kids, women that have been through abuse, through trauma, through just sex that just was not enjoyable when we wanted to shut down, we detach and we numb out. So whilst we might have womb space, now is the time we get to turn that into gold. And that's what alchemy was all about, right? Turning metals into gold.
Yeah.
So that's what we want to do. We want to think about literally our pussies glowing up, sparkling. Like, we want to feel so connected and so familiar, because we can, and based on cultural reasons, our parenting, societal conditioning, we're like, oh no, I don't want to talk about it, or like, it's down there, or right? And actually, hey, no, I have one of these, I'm all good with owning it. So it's about making a woman feel really empowered in her body, and owning her pleasure, owning her sexual organs and her sexuality. So,
and how do you do this? What are you doing with your clients? Tell.
With your yonis. So no, there's never direct contact, right? But I do a vast range of things. So I started out teaching yoga. And that's actually something. So I had, after my first daughter, who's now just turned 12, I had terrible postnatal depression. And I went to a weekly Ashtanga class and had weekly counseling. And the combination of the embodiment and the talking therapy literally saved my life. Like, I really don't know what would have happened had I have not had this medicine. So for me, I was like, oh my goodness, I want to share this. Like, I need to help out other women. I want someone, even if I can just make one other mother feel that they're cared for and listened to, like, I've done my life's job. That's it. So I love doing that. And then as I was progressing through my journey, I was like, there's more to this. There's more that I want to offer. And so I thought, okay, cool. I'm really into Reiki. I'm really into crystals. Like, let's do that path and see where that takes us. A lot of like shamanic practices too. And then I was like, yeah, I love that, but I'm still not there. These women are coming to me with something, and I'm helping them in a way that I haven't quite put a label on yet. So with crystals and Reiki, I then developed that into Yoni alchemy. So there is, like, imagine Wombspace, obviously externally being like covered in crystals, receiving loving Reiki. So there's lots of youngness when that happens. Like bodywork, as we've worked together before on that, is fundamentally important, because, you know, particularly mothers who are being touched because their kid is like, let me touch you, or like, you know, it's like breastfeeding, or like grabbing your hair, and you're just like, oh, I love you, but like, oh my God, stop grabbing at me all the time.
Yes.
Or we might have a partner that's also then like, also love me, love me, love me.
Yeah.
Right. And then the ability, or even say during labor, during smear tests, during like doctor's appointments, we're being touched, but in a way we're like, oh, just get the fuck off. Right.
Yeah, like, this is not comfortable.
This is not what I want. So actually we're craving other human touch. Not I can't speak for everyone, but like, especially during lockdown, like the amount of the lack of touch, the huge impact that had for our nervous systems was major. We are born sociable creatures. We are born to connect with others. When we connect through polyvagal theory, like, we're right in rest and digest. We feel very comfortable, so we're able to connect. Like, we're able to have that social ability turn on. So when the world was like, you can't see anyone that you love, don't go near them, the world will end and it will be your fault.
Yeah, you will kill your loved ones.
You will kill your neighbor's nan if you look at her. Do you know? You know. It's like, oh God. But even though obviously we had to go along with policies and procedures, you know, for the house, it meant that we started not receiving as much touch as we would want. And so for a woman to have touch that's obviously, of course, consensual, always at the like foremost of it, and in a very loving, holding way, where there isn't anything expected, where that woman can just go and just surrender into her feminine completely. So I was like, ooh, this is incredible. Like, I want to do more and more of this. So we've done body work together, right? So we know that it's never head to toe massage. We follow 60 minutes and this is the sequence. Like, it's never like that. You get a woman in front of you, you put, like, you sit with her, you talk with her for ages beforehand. You're like, okay, cool. Let's give you what you need. Let's make you feel freaking unique. Let's make you feel wonderful in your body again.
Yeah.
So then that developed into nervous system work, which I love to geek out about. So you will have to like give me the when you see me just go off on one. But nervous system work for women is just fundamental for our sensuality and sexuality, because we need to feel safe in our bodies, able to even be aroused, but soft enough to receive as well, open enough, like feel safe and secure. So I started doing more and more work into that. I then did sex coaching, like that just opened up, and oh my goodness, I just love it.
As in like Gillian Anderson in Sex Education?
Similar in that she's a sex therapist, right? So she'll get someone to come in. It's very like chair-based, couch-based, which we kind of really see in only like psychoanalytical kind of Freud Jungian work.
Sat with a notebook going, oh, really? Up
yes.
Your bum. Okay.
Tell me more about that. Oh, an anal fixation. Okay, what was your mother and father like when you were pre-verbal? I mean, the thing is, we do actually talk a lot about childhood parenting conditioning. So actually a lot of my background, so I worked for a mental health charity for 10 years. well, nearly 10 years, that that definitely comes in, and I'm so grateful for that opportunity because it showed me the other side of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, with the sex coaching, for me, the part that wasn't my cup of tea necessarily was the mechanics. Try this toy and this, even though I'm banging lube, which is a CBD lube, which is the one.
Please tell us, and we will link to it in the show notes.
Yep, absolutely. Like that is the one, my friend. Or like this position, or get him to do blah blah blah, you know, stuff like that. Like it wasn't the nuts and bolts for me. It was a lot about the nervous system. It was a lot about communication,
Yeah.
a lot about intimacy and pleasure. But for me, see, whereas I won't work with men or even couples, for me, the priority is always the woman. And it's making that woman feel like a goddamn queen. When she comes in, she gets everything that she needs. Everything. If she needs to talk to me for the whole session, that's what she does. If she's like, just touch me, I need to be touched, like here, like just tickle my hair and just do pretty things, like fine, that's what she gets. If she's like, Becky, I'm really ready to be like pulled open and hair pulled and expansive, that's what she gets. Breast massage, you know. So there's a lot of what are you craving, and let's work with that. So it's very intuitive, very gives that woman permission to be like, hey, this is what I need.
Yeah.
And
you can't get that from the nuts and bolts all the time. Maybe occasionally you can be like, you could try this. But
yes, and like, thanks for that position, it's mind-blowing, and that's what we do every time, right? Great. And there's nothing that, you know, that work is really, really important. But for me, sex with a partner or partners is the sort of cherry on the top. When we talk about another or bringing another in, that's like quite far down the line for me. Making a woman feel very sensual in her own body and in the day-to-day experiences is the place that I like. That's my fave.
okay, this is perfect because I have got many friends who are in a place in their relationship where they're just not into sex anymore. They've completely lost interest. And I don't know whether it's a relationship thing or post motherhood or perimenopausal stuff or what, but it feels like, you know, it never mind your partner. Do you know what I mean? Because then you're just doing service sex. You're just seeing to them. And that isn't good for you either if you're just doing it for the sake of someone else. Like, they need what you're talking about.
I love that you call it service sex, because my husband and I joke about it, but we used to call it maintenance bones.
Yeah, like you need it's the glue in the relationship, but equally, it needs to be consensual. And if you're just doing it for somebody else, they're not going to enjoy it either.
No, and the difference is with that as well, and you've touched on a really good point, is that even though we might say yes, even though we might lie down and we're like, oh well, I'm with a loving partner, we're in love, that like this is consensual, I obviously I don't feel like this is abusive, but if we're like, oh, I kind of would rather be doing like 297 other things right now.
Yeah,
right, Wombspace is actually not consenting. So even if you're like, yeah, okay, and even if it feels kind of like all right and you're getting wet, you are lubricating, it's kind of, oh, there's, oh yeah, all right, okay. Or even if there's nothingness, it's numbness, or even, oh my goodness, the worst, discomfort, right? We actually don't have consent from our bodies or from womb space. So we're going against what our womb wants us to do. When we start doing that, we're saying no to ourselves and stepping into how we want sex to be. Now, when we think about, you know, that kind of question about quality over quantity, that's what we want. We want it to be, and they don't have to be full body, mind-blowing orgasms and everything. There's candles and rose petals. I mean, if there is, right? Great. But we want something that feels pleasurable, and that doesn't even mean climax. So we often think about sex as, right, and especially for men, right, 0 to 60, that goes from nothing to ejaculation, and that's the end. And we have porn to thank for a lot of that, and believing that that's really what sex is about, is is pleasing a man, and it for sex finishes when he finishes. So a lot of this, is conditioned into us, even if we don't watch porn. This is what our peers, this is what our friends, when we're growing up, guys are watching. And if someone hasn't reached out to them and been like, actually, son, let me just tell you the real, like, how the birds and the bees work, a woman really likes this, but obviously speaking in a heteronormative term, like that. But if they're not being guided by something, or especially when we're younger and we're having sex, like, we don't really know what we want.
No.
We don't really know like what works for us and what feels good. Again, we're kind of going what we see in the movies, how a woman just comes in 10 seconds. I mean, firstly,
15 times.
15 times again and again and again. Oh my God, first time was amazing. Right? So we're being like dubbed into, it's like when you see in movies when a woman goes into labor because her waters break.
Yeah.
You actually know
Quick, get it there.
Oh shit, the baby's coming. The crown is right. But
48 hours later for me.
Right, thank you. We know that a precipitous labor, i.e., when the waters break before anything else happens, is actually quite rare. That's not how every birth starts. Despite, even in 2023, seeing movies where the woman is stood there and she's in these like Jimmy Choos and she's at lunch, and then, oh my God, right? Like, that needs to stop.
Did that not happen for you?
No, I mean, actually, second time, and that's a long story, but yeah, it does. A precipitous labor is actually more rare than it is common. That's not what we're here to talk about today. So there's a lot of conditioning about what sex should be or who it should be for. So if we're doing these service sex sessions or maintenance bones like 2 to 3 times a week, we could be like, oh yeah, we have sex all the time. It's like, okay, great. Is it good sex? Is it good sex? Do you like it? Are you enjoying yourself? Are you aroused? Even if it's not climatic, are you aroused? Right. And then we start looking at things. Okay, cool. Let's talk about that. Yeah. How does it make you feel? Right. So much rather a decent session over many nonsense sessions. We're not here for subpar sex. And as a woman gets older and as we become mothers as well, like there's the whole, oh, like sex kind of dwindles as we get older. Absolutely no. Like we know exactly what turns us on. We're much more likely to be like, I want to do this. I want to try this. Right. Whereas when we're younger, we're kind of eager to please, you know, and we do it for our partner. We do it for someone else. But then when we step into motherhood, you know, we kind of get to sit on the throne and wear this crown and be like, oh my God, like, look what my body has achieved. Look what Wombspace has achieved. From now on, she gets treated like a queen or it's no go. Right? So we just start claiming more and more. So the more confident
some people do.
Some people do, of course, right? But that is there. There's the mysticism of becoming a mother and how we get to be like, wow, I'm kind of the wise woman now. Like I made a freaking kid. I'm not going to put up with having shit sex, right? So that's, even if we're not saying it, we maybe deserve it.
Yeah, and some of these people that are just not into sex, maybe that's the connection they haven't made. Their womb is literally like, fuck off unless you're going to treat me right. So you're therefore not interested.
Think about sex education as well, right? It was either bleeding or babies. That's what your womb's good for, bleeding or babies.
Oh my God. What's a clitoris?
Yeah. Oh, where? Right. So, and in fact, so Izzy had somebody older, she had sex education, I think, year 5 or year 6. And she came back and she went, Mummy, you'd be really happy. They actually said the outside part is a vulva and not a vagina. Because I had pre-prepared her for this. I was like, if they even dare try and tell you that that part is called a vagina, I need you to put your hand up and correct them. So she came back and she was like, Mummy, you know, they said what you said. I was like, yes, winning. And so even the language from a young age, like I've got 2 girls. So right from the get-go, it was never a nunny or like whatever baby
was doodah.
Right? But you wouldn't call your elbow something random, or you're not like anatomically, right? Let's get it right. So even though it's funny because my husband was well uncomfortable with it, like like a 2-year-old being like vulva. I was like, legend, freaking love it. So again, it's making our kids feel comfortable in firstly speaking to what it is and giving it its correct name. You know, that isn't necessarily for everyone, but when we think about transgenerational guilt, shame, societal, cultural, that gets fed through, we kind of need to be like, okay, cool, well, how can I change this moving forward? How can I help you know, our daughters, yes, but also like our sons be aware of what really it's all about. So yeah, during sex education, it's like bleeding or babies is really not much about pleasure at all, and that it is mechanical, and that it's designed for a man to ejaculate and for the woman to get pregnant. Again, heteronormative, right? But it's, so we're missing out on the fact that well, we can just do it for pleasure.
Yeah, let's just do
And
it for fun.
one day you'll enjoy it, right? It's that type of thing. So yeah, there's a lot of detachment, especially after we have kids, perimenopausal, say we're dry, and we're like, oh well, like that's a noticeable difference. Sex is uncomfortable. Like again, that's where like a lube is fantastic. But it's really that understanding, because there's a thing called arousal non-concordance. So we might be mentally turned on, but actually like, oh, I'm not producing any lubrication, I'm quite dry, like what's going on? I thought I was turned on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's having the mind body relationship is really important, like as to what is going on. And after we have been through something, like birth is trauma at the end of the day, like it's a trauma to the body and mentally, come on, let's face it. So that where we detach, we numb out. Similar if we've had a C-section, like that whole part of us, we can be like, doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
Or our boobs, regardless if we're bottle or breastfeeding, like milk's going to come through. So all of a sudden we've got these two freaking beach balls on our chest and they hurt. Oh my goodness. Remember the first time you got into a shower and even the pressure of the water,
yes,
like I have got
milk spraying everywhere and
everywhere.
You're not in control anymore.
No. So we become detached with the body. If we've had an episiotomy, if we've torn, scarring, we're kind of like, oh, I don't want to look. It's a mess. And that saying, oh, it literally makes my ovaries curl up.
It's like watching your favorite pub burn down.
It squeezed me. What?
It's so awful.
Ridiculously awful. And terms like the husband stitch, right? Like back in the day, obviously it doesn't happen now, but bloody hope it doesn't. So yeah, if a woman had torn during birth, like that whole kind of, the husband or the father would give them some extra money to like sew it up a couple threads more so that it was tighter. All of this stuff is right, exactly. So how are we going to be like, oh my goodness, my pussy is actually beautiful after I've had a kid? Like we're going to be like, I don't want to look, I don't even have one, I'm pissing blood from it, like absolutely not, right? So so a lot of the sensuality coaching that I do with women, a part of the homework is to get like this beautiful but small handheld mirror. And I remember being the same after Izzy. I had stitches, and I remember without looking, I was like, I'm not fucking looking, but I could feel like a bit of my thread poking out, and I was like, that is, oh my goodness, I can't even imagine. And I didn't have the same with Willow, but I remember just that sensation of being like, if it feels like that, and in my head I've got this like engorged like thing going on,
like a massive gash.
like a gash. I fucking hate that word. So I get them to buy like either a very beautifully ornate decorated handheld mirror, or getting one and then applying crystals to it or glitter, or just making it really special. So subconsciously we understand this is like a thing of beauty.
Yes, the ceremony.
It's ceremony, exactly. It's having like I'd love to talk more about this in a bit, like kind of awakening our sensuality, but get them to have a bath and candlelight and massage with oil, so they feel down regulated, they feel safe in their own bodies, because we can't tell another woman how to feel safe in her body, so whatever she needs to do. But so it's low lighting, right? And there's no full length mirror near us, but again, a small handheld mirror, and be taking a couple of breaths. And if it's the first time that we've looked, for a while, just, you don't even have to have children, but like this is great to do during menopause. It's great if we're not that familiar, like if the menstruation products we use don't involve like much touch, so if we use pads instead of like a moon cup or whatever. So deep breath, and then just taking the mirror down and just seeing a part. So we might just see like the outer parts, like even where the thigh meets the outer labia, like, and that might be enough for the first time. So nervous system work, right? That titration is bit by bit by bit, nice and slow. If that feels okay, we're willing to go a bit more, just moving the mirror round and checking out other angles, and bit by bit by bit, until we can kind of see the whole vulva. That, if the woman feels safe enough to expand on it bit by bit and over the weeks, we then get a bigger mirror. Obviously, this is something she does in the privacy of her own home. Not that I'm not there.
Sitting watching.
Yeah, but I mean, eventually I do. There's a lot of stuff that I do want to do, but that will come down the line. And then seeing herself naked in a full blown mirror, like head to toe, that takes a lot. Oh my gosh, that takes a lot after you've had a kid to be able to actually look in the mirror.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean to say you have to love what you see, right? But it's just to be like, okay, right now, this is what my body is doing. This is how my body looks. Okay, cool. Right now, this is how Wombspace is. And so bit by bit by bit, we just bring in the, like, it's almost a reintroduction to our bodies, to our vulvas, to our vaginas, to be, okay, cool. It's different. My body is different now. But I'm going to try and work with what I'm working with. So you see how at this point, sex with a partner is so far away.
Yeah.
So far away, because we're coming home to our bodies. So that covers like a lot of the work. Yoni steaming. Oh my goodness, yoni steaming is absolutely incredible postpartum. And that's what it was for thousands of years ago. That's how we would heal postpartum.
What is it? Sorry.
So yoni steaming. So being over a bowl of boiling water, and there are safe ways to do this, so like it isn't for everyone, and there are contraindications, but it's essentially you are either over a bowl of hot water, or you might have like a sauna thing in a steam, because you have proper yoni steam sauna boxes that you can sit on, wrapping yourself around with a towel and a blanket and being open, so you're naked. I mean, you can have clothes upwards, but obviously you want womb space to be exposed, and you gently just sit, and it is, you know, like when you steam your face over a bowl, it's exactly the same thing. So we check it for temperature, like as I said, there's lots of, like, don't just go try this at home because I'm just so but you know, there's lots of things that we have to check out. But yoni steaming is such a beautiful way. So we don't do it when we're bleeding, and postpartum we do it like as soon as the kind of bleeding has stopped, but it softens the uterus. It helps. What it can do, you know, it's so powerful that, say you've had your tubes tied, or you've had where they've actually been like cauterized, so to stop the eggs coming through, because it heals scar tissue at such a quick rate that if you've had that done and you do not wish to get pregnant, it's an indication, because a contraindication, because it can soften that scarring tissue and open them back up.
Oh.
Right. So there's no it's not unbearably hot. It's not, because we're saying, I've just seen as well, bloody hell, one of the Kardashians have released these gummies. Did you see on my stories? I was like, release gummies to make your pussies taste a certain way. You know, like the whole urban myth about having pineapple for men makes their semen taste different. So she's done this, like it is full of vitamins and actual healthy stuff, in fairness, but some of the way that it was marketed is very much like about it tasting sweeter. Yeah. So the vagina is
very man-focused.
Very man-focused, right? Partner focused. So it's self-cleaning. So it's not to say that you're trying to clean it. It's not to say that the smell isn't right and we're trying to change it with different herbs and stuff like that. It really is to help so much healing, really, and softening through. So it can lengthen a period, it can shorten a period depending on what herbs you have. If there is if we're working with thrush, if we're working with UTIs, it can clear all of this out.
Wow.
It really is. But imagine, like, it's just steaming water, and it's the vapor, so it's not like you're not douching yourself. It's not like a freaking boiling douche. It's not that. Very, very gentle. It's very soft. You work with your body. In traditional Chinese medicine, we believe that anything disease comes from is stagnant energy. So imagine that you're bringing warmth back into womb space, warm blood, a fresh flow of oxygen. You know, we're getting the movement. The uterus space or womb space element is water, feminine, so we're honoring that kind of magic that moves through. So that can be deeply healing too. So when we realize that we don't just have to either bleed from it or have babies from it, and we're like, or even orgasm, and saying they're having great sex, amazing, but actually we can go even further into this healing. We can go even deeper into this journey. And it really is about learning more about ourselves, but awakening the sensuality is just delicious. So you see, again, partner stuff way down there. Even if you're like, okay, I've had my 6-week check, we're okay to have sex. Like, even if you're ticking that box, and no, thank you. We want to feel, there is a part of it that feels like doing it for the first time, but this time we get to be older and more educated and more having a long list of non-negotiables about what we want. So when we have a bit of that awakening, and like say we're having a bit of a conversation, someone listens to this podcast, I'm like, fuck, do you know what, I'm actually done with a maintenance bone. I'm really over lying down on the floor. I just love it.
You're so filthy.
Or on the bed, sure, wherever. But it's that we get to be like, hey, this is what I want from now on.
Yeah. And connecting back into that.
Yeah. So there's a lot to be said. So where I do sensuality coaching, I have this where we work with Yoni eggs. So a crystal egg that we insert into the vagina. So this is a 3-month coaching program because it's so in depth and must be at the rate that the body and womb space give consent. So even when I get women come to me and I give them their egg, like present them through ceremony, it's very elaborate, it's very beautiful, because we really want the subconscious to be like, oh my gosh, this is so luxurious,
special,
like so self-seductive, I'm into it. Even if she's like, Becci, I'm so ready to take that egg home and insert it, I'm like, with love and light, of course it's your body, and if you're absolutely wanting to do it now, I'm never going to say no to you. But I don't teach insertion and release until the 2nd, if not 3rd week of our coaching together, because we want time with the egg to to merge energies, and to on the magic sort of side of things and create a beautiful altar for it and be like, wow, this is an investment in myself and my sensuality. But also because we're trying to work at Wombspace, like pace and how quick she wants to move. Because if we've had abuse, if we've had trauma, if we've had like birth, where we've had, or even smear tests and examinations where we've said yes because we kind of know in a roundabout way we've got to, but Wombspace is like, no, please don't put that speculum inside me. Oh, please don't use freezing cold lube. Please don't. There's just so much. Oh, great,
crank it open.
Yeah, shining a torch into me while my knees are in stirrups, like having a great time. So there's so much that we even like verbally have to, well, we never have to, right, but that we agreed to. But Wombspace is like, oh fuck, really don't want to be doing this. Right. So there's the whole point with Yoni eggs, like we might even introduce the egg to the vulva and that's it. Like it might be just an external introduction and that's it. That's enough for one day or even a week. We want to be aroused and excited, yes, not that it's for pleasure, but because we're ready and we feel safe and secure enough. When we act from like nervous system regulation space, and we're like, oh, okay, cool, this is my journey. So I have a client that has never inserted the egg at all, but all of the work that we do around it is so fundamentally important to her sensual awakening and to just finding empowerment for herself. That's why it's called the path of the empowered empress. So Yoni eggs, just to give you some history on those, used to be used like back in like Chinese emperor time.
Oh. And
the emperor would have like loads of consorts. I want to say concubines as well, similar thing. And they would use like, how back then, like the emperor, like when we've done our magic school and research and stuff like that, it's all about longevity. They wanted to live forever. They wanted to be immortal. So living as long as possible was really important for them, and jade is a very good luck, is a very prosperous crystal that we see a lot in Chinese culture. And so they used to use eggs from, and we can still get them now obviously, but from jade. And that, that's real potent kind of work, because they wanted to keep the emperor interested. They wanted to kind of be in his like top 3 or his main squeeze on the side. So the queens, the consorts, they would do this, to try and not necessarily like, and we have to be really clear here, is not not to have had a tighter vagina. Like that's something that we really culturally need to drop. But that, you know, she was able to step into her sensuality and like own the space. So they would use jade eggs to do this, because it's very different. So sometimes, you know, we hear about Kegels, we hear about vaginal weights, and the idea of like squeezing and squeezing and squeezing and making it tighter and squeeze and all of this, that is literally 50% of the argument and the reason for them. As women, we are hypertonically tight, which is typically actually, and not just birth, but where prolapse comes from, or incontinence. Because if you imagine they're still muscles, they still fatigue. Imagine you've been pulling your belly in, pulling up on the pelvic floor, or as we say, like pelvic diaphragm, because it's not a cold, flat, inanimate object, like very much not so. We're squeezing, we're pulling in, we're trying to be skinnier, we're trying to look good in this photo, that photo, that actually the muscles go, screw this, I'm out, oof. And then they just release, and then we feel the numbness. Then it's really hard to, and we have to really do the work physically, mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually sometimes to like feel alive and awake and heal after prolapse. So when we know that, and you know, even things like bouncing back after a baby, and again, things like the husband stitch and all of this, just absolute nonsense. There is so much pressure, societal pressure, for us to get that tight pussy again for our partners, right? Like, oh my God, please do one. So that it's all about the release. So we insert an egg, but then we do exercises around with the emphasis actually on being release. Right? Notice how you just took a deep breath when I did that. Your mouth opened, your jaw softened. I bet you any money that somewhere in the pelvic diaphragm, it just went, oh, okay.
All the muscles in my back just went, you don't have to be tense.
You don't have to carry this nonsense. This isn't yours, right? So when we work that, so again, even though there is a deep, beautiful magic side of this, there's so much for me that's also nervous system based. Like I really do love the clinical science. I do find it very sexy. Or at least I try to combine the both to make it very sexy.
It's so sexy.
But the science is just so sexy. So yeah, like when we get to kind of relearn that and re-educate and therefore empower ourselves, and we're like, oh no, I don't have to be doing my Kegel squeezes and squeeze and squeeze and squeeze and squeeze all the time. It's actually, but when you soften the walls, when you open your mouth and when you take an exhalation, we move into rest and digest. The nervous system feels so much more safer, as opposed to when we squeeze in, when we're really tight in the mouth, when we take gasps in, we go into fight and flight.
Yeah.
So we do the opposite. So imagine like having sex when we're like
trying to squeeze, like and
yeah, it becomes like friction. That's not hot. No.
Friction is not hot.
We've all been there. So that like the easing into it, like I swear down, when I started my Yoni egg practice, it changed my life. Literally changed my life. My whole, I don't think I knew you before. Like my branding was the way that it is. So it used to be my Pisces sign, so very watery, very astrological stars, even though I have moons now, but it was all blue and pink and purple and kind of twinkly mermaidy vibe, right?
Yeah.
And when I did this work, I was like, holy shit, no, it's my Aries moon sign that needs to come through. I had to burn everything down, metaphorically and literally, and it was deep blood red. So that real fiery Aries energy came through, and I was like, this is how I need to live my life, and I'm going to do this in every single aspect of where possible.
Are you Pisces and Aries cusp?
So Pisces sun, so my star sign is Pisces, but my moon sign is Aries.
Okay.
So like, so my Pisces even being like the creative, the healer, the art, that sort of romantic notion, and then Aries being like the fiery one, the driven one, the like warrior-esque kind of energy. So when I was like, you know, and I always had been quite a sexual being from a young age, and then having kids, you're like, that went out the window. And you get lost in that fog. You're like, okay, well, I'm a mum now, and yeah, that's what it's for, and blah, 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 blah. It was when I started doing Yoni egg work, I was like, for who? I'm just going to spend the rest of my life having like sex, which is just No, I don't think so.
No.
I do not think so. So yeah, so I did the work for myself, and again, but that was my work.
Yeah.
That was like not for me, because it wasn't that my like husband wasn't a generous lover, shall we say, like he's fucking awesome. But I was like, no, I don't want you to do that for me. And he'd be like, but I really want to please you. And I'm like, no, I just can't be bothered. Like you just crack on with it. I developed a terrible all over skin rash because of my sexual oppression and like years of trying to work out what it was. So and antihistamines, corticosteroid cream that the doctors would give me, even though I did my Chinese traditional medicine, I did Ayurvedic, I did all the stuff that we know that you and I would recommend to someone. But it wasn't until I started getting like actually full on kinky that did that disappear. And in fact, it was Scorpio season, it was Halloween, and we tried some really nice stuff. That was the last day I ever took an antihistamine ever.
Ooh.
Right. So
thinking like we probably need to finish soon. Do you think I don't even know if we can even cover this here or whether we have to get you back on again. But I guess we've got two things here. The one is you've got somebody who just is so disconnected from their sex life, they're not even interested. So that's kind of what we've been talking about and the stuff you're doing with your clients. But what about somebody who's doing the service sex? Can we kind of end on like how you might reintroduce a little bit of play and a little bit of fun and, you know, some of this Scorpio shit that you've just been talking about?
Scorpio kinky shit. So absolutely. So again, less from like a mechanical point of view, because it wasn't that we necessarily I mean we did try like being tied up and blindfolded and stuff like that, right, which is cool, which, you know, but I had to do the work for myself. And I had to be like, I need to feel confident in myself. So when where we are having service sex, say you brought out 50 different toys and all the blindfolds and all the paddles and everything, if you're not feeling into your sensuality, you're going to see them and be like, no freaking thanks. So that's what I mean. It's not a case of being like, try this awesome vibrate. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's some freaking good ones on the market, but if we are not stepping into our pleasure and our empowerment, that is still going to be really, really far down the line. So like something, for instance, especially as like it's spring coming up, like this awakening. So we're feeling into this maiden energy, whether or not we necessarily feel more turned on, but this is the energy of the season. So she's flirtatious, she's playful, you know, she's the adolescent that's about to step into sexual awakening. We see this like physically with the flowers, you know, they're like blooming and pushing up. There's something really freaking phallic about it, right? They're bursting into life. The flowers are starting to blossom and open to the sun. They're kind of lying back and they're like, I'm ready to receive the sunlight, like penetrate me. Like all the colors, they're literally designed to attract the insects to cross-pollinate. Like this time is sexy time. So what can be really nice is basically dating the self again, romancing and seducing the self for our awakening and our arousal. Now, one of the things that I recommend, of it being a Pisces, I'm like, water, be in the bath all the time, or where you can. But as mothers, sometimes we hear, oh, I'd love to have a bath, I just don't have time. Or, you know, we've all been there, right? Where we've had a shower and we brought the baby in a Moses basket and kind of put them on the floor. So like we're still there. We're still 2 seconds, but it's the only time, and I haven't washed my hair in 3 weeks and I feel freaking gross. Yeah. Or your partner's got the baby downstairs, but you can still hear it crying, even when it's not crying, and you can't relax. So when we have a bath, we're signaling to ourselves, great, this is something I'm not going to hop in and hop out of. Let's take it slow. Yeah, if it means getting the baby or the kids out of the house, great, see you, bye. Get someone to do that for you. Light some candles, put your favorite music on, burn some incense, like do something that signals to the subconscious, oh, I'm about to receive something here, I'm about to slow down. The amount of women I work with who are like, oh, it feels really like selfish, it feels really indulgent and luxurious, right? There's nervous system work there to be done. That's all. Yeah. Especially when that kind of mum guilt, you need to be doing this, do this for your kids, right? So we're going to try and slow everything down. A nice bath either. And you know what my favorite thing to do is? What? Yes, Actually, no, my favorite thing to do is, yes, pleasure in a bath. Lovely. But reading erotica. And I am reading a banging book at the moment, which I really need to get some commission from because I'm recommending it to everyone.
Tell me.
It's the Hades and Persephone's trilogy by Claire St. Scarlett, or no, wait, Scarlett St. Clement. That's terrible.
That
I don't
does
even
ring.
know.
Well, we will link
It's
to
a
it in the
touch
show
of
notes.
darkness, and there's more books of them, and oof, for me, so it ticks the box about being mythology. Love it, love a bit of that, but it's delicious. Like I can't wait to get to bed to read it. I'm so tired. I managed to do two pages. So that's something, because yes, there's watching porn, which has been great, but there's a lot about that instant gratification. Whereas when we read, it slows everything down.
And you're imagining, because I find porn to be too in my face.
Yes, literally. Sometimes you'll have it all in her face by many people. Right?
Yeah. And if you've got any sexual trauma, it's not fun.
No, because you can't like close your eyes and just type in the thing that you want and then just hope that you're not going to see some other stuff, right? It can be highly triggering.
Yeah.
But erotica, if you're like, no thanks, it's like, okay, cool, I'm just going to put the book down. But that, you see, that's why I love. So reading erotica, yummy. Writing it. So like there are.
Yeah, tell me.
Writing erotica for me is one of my absolute creative, pleasurable outlets. I just love it. I love it. And I wouldn't say exactly at all anywhere near that I'm the best writer, but I know what turns me on, and I know how to write as if I'm my audience, because at the end of the day, I am my audience, right?
Yeah.
I am that woman that's been through what she's been through. So writing that is so much fun. So you might read some stuff and then get some ideas yourself. And you don't have to bloody self-publish on Amazon or write to Penguin, but doing it for the sake of doing it, it's incredible. And there are so many Instagram accounts now that are doing similar. Highly recommend looking for that sort of stuff. So imagine that you're having this lovely relaxing bath, you're reading something that's turning you on, that's amazing. You might then give yourself a really slow sensual massage with oil. Maybe you feel confident enough to do it in front of the mirror. Maybe there's dance and you have some sexy music on that makes you feel alive. Coming back to what turns you on, and that does not mean needing to then have an orgasm, needing to masturbate for orgasm's sake. It can just be riding in the arousal. So if we think about, we're awakening the spring maiden, we're like, actually that really turns me on, or I really like the idea of that, or like, let me just reach out and speak to someone about what that might be like. So we get to be curious and playful, because at the end of the day, pleasure is play. As adults, it's play. So wherever we can draw that out, that is where it's at. So yoni eggs, like that's completely for you. Yeah, it might arouse your partner to be like, I'm just popping this egg inside, right? Okay, great. Sure, take it, babe, whatever you want. But when we're like, that's for us, that's when we're empowered, that's when we're embodied, and that's when we freaking find our pleasure.
Oh my God, that's like the best line to finish on, Becci. Thank you so much.
You're
absolutely
so
fascinating. I feel like I want to work with you now.
How's it? Well, I'm going to come shortly, aren't I? So let's go.
Sign me up for some bodywork, because I didn't get any last time.
What? I didn't touch you last time? Okay, promise. Gonna do that.
Next time. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome, my darling. Lovely to see you. Lots of love.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time for another episode of Happily Ever After with me, Hannah Harvey. It would be wonderful if you could leave a review and subscribe. And of course, if you've got a friend who might enjoy this episode, then please do pass it on. For anything else, you can get in touch with me through either Instagram @mumsdays or through my website, mumsdays.com.